Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Barrett's esophagus. So I have actually a comment here from a follower, and so we're going to be talking about Barrett's esophagus in this video. The good news is Barrett's esophagus it's treatable, it's reversible, it's curable. The bad news is it puts you at risk for esophageal cancer. So it is something you need to take seriously if you get a diagnosis of Barrett's esophagus. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and about some of the things that you can be doing to be focusing on healing your Barrett's esophagus and not just managing it. Okay, so this comment comes from Agnes, and she says, "Hi Pam, I'm enjoying the knowledge you have on this subject. I was diagnosed with Barrett's esophagus in 2018. I have never had stomach problems, but certain events in my life resulted in this happening. In 2017, I was going home to Mother's funeral in England, and during the flight, 8 hours, I ate some food on the plane which caused the acid to come up. I was sick for several days. Also in 2017, I was in Mexico and ate some food and got an infection, H. pylori, and the only symptoms I had was awful gagging in the back of my throat. In 2018, I had an endoscopy and was diagnosed with Barrett's esophagus. I had an endoscopy in March of 2019 and they found a small size hiatal hernia. The specialist encouraged me to take Nexium. I researched on the web and looked at various YouTube videos, and I started in late May doing your breathing exercises from YouTube. She goes on to say that she did purchase my course and she's gotten some improvement, but she still has she's still having a little bit of reflux and a sore throat. So I want to address a little bit, first of all, about her comment. She talks about that she never had stomach problems. And then in 1 year, she had the death of her mother, a funeral, a lot of traveling, both to England and to Mexico, where she had, it sounds like, some food poisoning, which happens, a lot of vomiting and gagging. And so all of this, you know, she's saying that she never had stomach issues, and then all of this stuff happened in 2017, and then she started to have reflux. And so first of all, I just want to make a brief reminder that when it comes to stress and digestive distress, particularly hiatal hernia, they almost always go hand in hand. When we are stressed out, whether it's what we think of as stress, just being overwhelmed, it could be fear, it could be worry, it could be small things that build up. It could be irritations, you know, just maybe living with a lot of people in your household and just always being in a low-grade state of irritability. Maybe you're going through hormonal changes and you're just irritable all the time anyway. All of this stuff equals stress. And when our body is in a state of stress and we're not doing things that give our body a break, right, those things that we call managing our stress, then the body, the muscles of the body, as a natural response to that stress, will be more in a contracted state as opposed to a relaxed state. And when it comes to the muscles of the abdomen, when they are contracted and pulled in and sucked in tight much of the time, this can create what's called higher intragastric pressure, or high amount of pressure on the organs of the abdominal cavity, which include your intestines and your stomach and your liver and so forth. And so you have like a squishing or a crowding effect in that abdominal cavity, which can, you know, if it's that way a lot, repetitively over time, that can put us at risk, and we can begin to see a hiatal hernia, because that stomach will seek out escape through the hole in the diaphragm that sits right above the stomach, known as the hiatus. And so I just wanted to briefly, I talk about this a lot just because a lot of people want to disregard stress as though it's not that big of a factor, when in fact it is a huge factor. And so finding a way for you personally, and everybody does this in a different way, to manage your stress is key. If you have digestive issues, if you have a hiatal hernia, if you have reflux, you've got to figure out a way to manage stress. And one of the best things you can do is master the ability to relax your abdominal muscles. And a lot of people don't want to do this because it means kind of letting their gut hang out. It means not tightening their core all of the time, which they think they're supposed to be doing. And so if that's you, you at least need to figure out a way to start taking time every day to relax your abdominal muscles. Maybe you're doing it 2 or 3 times throughout the day. Maybe you do it first thing in the morning, expand your abs and do some breath work, maybe at night, maybe during a lunch break in the middle of the day. Find some way to expand those abs, stretch those abs, allow that crowding that's happening in your abdominal cavity, that repetitive crowding, to relax, allow the organs to slip down a little bit. And if you do have a hiatal hernia, this is something that you really need to learn how to master, the ability to relax those abdominal muscles. That's part of my protocol in the ability to effectively reverse a hiatal hernia, okay? So I wanted to talk about stress. She talks about, all of these things going on, and then food poisoning on top of it with vomiting and gagging. Also, when we vomit, when we gag, the abdominal muscles violently contract. And so we have more of this, kind of a piling effect, a layering effect happening for this person. And so then she had her endoscopy, and she did get a diagnosis of Barrett's esophagus and also of hiatal hernia. So when it comes to Barrett, so what is Barrett's esophagus? Basically, it's a very injured and inflamed esophagus to the point where the cells of the esophagus have gone through a bit of a transformation. And so, simply put, it's an injured esophagus, which means it's an inflamed esophagus. And what we have to remember is our esophagus is the channel that everything we eat goes through. It's the tunnel that everything we consume goes through in order to get to the stomach, right? Whether it's your food, beverages, drugs, cigarettes. I mean, even when we smoke, we inhale. Yes, it goes down the windpipe, but it goes down the esophagus as well. And so that esophagus gets exposed to everything that we consume. And then for those of us with reflux, we've got acid rising up from the stomach going into the esophagus as well. And so when we have Barrett's esophagus and we ask the question, well, how did I get this condition? We have to first think about what our esophagus has been exposed to. And so if you're a smoker, if you're a drinker, if you have a bad diet filled with junk food, lots of processed foods, that means your esophagus is getting repetitively exposed to a lot of toxins, creating injury to those tissues, which means inflammation within the tissues. And so then how do we heal it? How do we heal an injured and inflamed esophagus? Well, the first thing we need to do is remove that toxic exposure, right? The body knows how to heal these conditions. It knows how to flood the area with what's needed to start the healing process, and it knows how to heal. But if we continue to injure an injured tissue or injured cell, then that healing process it can't catch up. It can't catch up. There's a battle happening between repetitive injury to the cells, the body trying to heal the cells, and it can't catch up as long as we continue to injure those cells. So the number one thing to do in terms of healing Barrett's esophagus is to reduce or eliminate exposure of those toxins to the tissues of the esophagus. And so then how do we do that? Well, think of it this way. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, what am I doing specifically that could be causing damage to the tissues or injury to the tissues of my esophagus? Do I smoke? Do I drink? Do I eat a lot of junk food? Do I take a lot of medication? So we need to take a look at all of these different things and each individual needs to devise a plan for them that's appropriate for them in order to minimize, reduce, and even eliminate the toxins that the esophagus is being exposed to. Now, does this mean that you'll never be able to partake in those things again? Not necessarily. I mean, if you eat a lot of junk food, maybe for the next couple of months, you're going to do a complete elimination. No junk food. If you smoke, obviously, you don't need me to tell you need to stop smoking. That's something that, yeah, you should quit. You should never pick that up again. But I mean, when it comes to, junk food and healing your esophagus, you really need to eliminate that at least until it's fully healed. And then you could you know, have an occasional treat. There's nothing wrong with that. My best recommendation for anyone with Barrett's esophagus is to focus on whole plant foods. So whole plant foods in general are very alkaline. And one of the things that does happen, not for everybody, but for many people who have Barrett's esophagus, they also have lingering pepsin within their esophagus, which is a digestive enzyme that doesn't belong there. It has refluxed up from the stomach, and it doesn't belong there, but it attaches itself to the tissues of the esophagus, and it's activated when it's exposed to anything acidic. And when it's activated, that means it's just another layering of injury to your esophagus, because when that pepsin does its job, it starts to enzymate the tissues of your flesh, of your esophagus. It's not supposed to do that because it's supposed to be in the stomach digesting the protein in your food. So yeah, that's number one, is to take a look at what you're eating. Obviously, if you're having any reflux, that's a big deal too, because that acid is coming up through the LES and into the esophagus and causing further injury to the tissues. So we need to address both of those. Many times, usually, almost always, if you get a diagnosis of Barrett's, you'll also be given a prescription of a proton pump inhibitor. And the reason for that is because it's going to minimize the acid so that you're not having all that reflux of acid coming up and causing further injury to the tissues. Just keep in mind, when it comes to proton pump inhibitors, they do have their time and place. I'm not saying no one should ever take one, but you should always keep in mind when you're on a proton pump inhibitor that it should be for the short term, that your goal is to eventually get off of that drug, and your goal is to treat and cure whatever condition that you have, whether it's Barrett's esophagus, reflux, ulcers, or whatever it is. You're on those drugs for a short term. You need to be doing other things to promote effective healing so that you can really knock out these conditions and not just, you know, kind of manage them for the rest of your life. We want to take care of them. We want to heal them, right? So yeah, number one, you have to look at what you're consuming and devise a plan that is primarily whole plant foods, alkaline foods. You can even do a daily alkaline beverage. It might be a cucumber juice, it might be a celery juice, and you can make these yourself if you have a juicer. It may be aloe vera juice. It may be, now aloe vera juice, if you do have, and some of these things you just have to kind of try through trial and error. If you do have a lot of damage to the esophagus and you drink something like aloe vera juice, some will find that it's very cooling and soothing. Others will find that it's just, it exacerbates the burning and the sore throat. So, I mean, I wouldn't go out and buy a really expensive big bottle of aloe vera juice. I would just, maybe if you can get your hands on, if you have a plant, you can make a juice from a stalk from the plant and just try it and see how it goes. But usually cucumber juice, not for everyone, but for most people, it's very soothing. And the reason that we would do like a daily juice or even twice a day between meals, a cucumber juice, a celery juice, is because the alkalinity of that juice is very denaturing to that pepsin. It's basically ridding the tissues of that lingering pepsin. So it's going to be another healing, layering effect of you supporting your body's ability to heal. Your body knows how to heal the condition. We need to eliminate those foods that are causing, and the acid that is causing the damage. But we can also do things to support that. So something like a cucumber juice, again, in between breakfast and lunch, and again, in between lunch and dinner, just maybe 5 or 6 ounces so that you have that flushing. And if you can't get your hands on that, even just, you can buy alkaline water in the store and just take, you know, maybe 8 ounces of alkaline water, even 5 ounces of alkaline water. Again, just drinking it in between meals, between breakfast and lunch, again, between lunch and dinner, so that you have that flushing, that cleansing of the esophagus, that cleaning of the esophagus. Hey, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie asks, what about slippery elm? So I think slippery elm is great. A lot of people use it who have these conditions of the esophagus and of the throat because there's a coating effect. It's not going to cure the condition, but it's a great supplement to help coat and protect the tissues of the esophagus. Okay, So we need to take a look at what we're consuming, and we need to address reflux. And if you have a hiatal hernia, which Agnesina does have a hiatal hernia, we also need to reverse our hiatal hernia. And for some people, this is what I work with people to reverse their hiatal hernias. Some people can do it quite easily and quickly. Others, it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of consistency, daily effort. So, but it can be done. It's just that everybody's hiatal hernia is different. They come in different sizes. Some people have a really hard time mastering the ability to relax the abdominal muscles. I've been working on this myself personally for a little over a year now, and I still catch myself daily squeezing my abs, sucking in my gut as a response to any kind of stress. And that's okay, that's natural, that's fine. But I'm aware of it now, and I can make that correction. I can relax the abs. I can even stretch my abs to give my stomach that room, the abdominal cavity that room for the stomach to move down and not be being pushed up against my diaphragm. So some people have a really hard time mastering this ability to relax their abs, and it makes sense. The abs, they're part of our core. They're engaged in so many different things that we do in terms of body movement, and they also engage in times of stress. Again, it could be small things. It could be a little bit of stress. I always tell this story, but when I first started recognizing this connection between my hiatal hernia and abdominal contractions was in the morning when I was brushing my teeth, getting ready for work. I didn't think I was stressed. I was brushing my teeth. I didn't think there was any stress in that moment. But I'd always noticed that I would start to get symptomatic when I was brushing my teeth. And I thought it was the toothpaste. I thought I was having a reaction to toothpaste. So I was trying all of these different kinds of toothpaste. I even started brushing my teeth with baking soda and then with just water. And it didn't matter. I would always become symptomatic when I brushed my teeth. And I think that when you're standing there, I really believe that for me, what was happening was I was standing at the sink, I was brushing my teeth, that's 2 whole minutes where you're just standing there doing this mindless thing, and your mind starts to do that thing. Well, oh yeah, I've got that event today and we're expecting about 75 extra people, and I don't think I made enough centerpieces for those extra tables that we're gonna have to pull out. So I need to make sure, your mind starts doing this thing where it's not necessarily stressful, but you're thinking about your day and you start to experience stress. Because you're multitasking, you're thinking about all these different things that you need to do. And so I would begin to get symptomatic when I brushed my teeth. And it took me a long time to realize that my abs were sucked in, pulled in, tight when I was standing there brushing my teeth, because I was starting to think about my day. And so what you can do is when you are symptomatic, is start to ask yourself in that moment, what are my abs doing right now? And you can even ask yourself that right now. If you can relax your abs, that means they were tight and pulled in. If you can't relax your abs, they still might be tight. You contract your abs so much of the time that you've lost the muscle memory and the ability to just let that go and relax your abs. Okay, Anne says, I must say that I've seen some significant improvement since doing your exercises. Good. I've been doing it for about 8 months now on a daily basis. Good. That's wonderful, Anne. And like I said before, some people get results right away and others just have to keep at it. So yeah, continue doing that daily, and really, if you haven't done so already, make sure you're placing an emphasis on those exercises that strengthen the diaphragm, because that's usually where the magic starts to happen and people start to notice that their symptoms are becoming less and less and less when that diaphragm really starts to close up, which means the hiatus is becoming nice, tight, strong muscle, which means that even when you do have that stomach contraction or whatever that's causing an increase in the intragastric pressure, that your hiatus is nice and tight and it's not allowing that stomach to go through. But we also have to remember that even if the stomach can't go through, if it can push severely against the diaphragm, that can put pressure on your LES and cause symptoms as well. So it's both. It's learning the ability to relax the abs and move and keep the stomach down, and also learning the ability to master the ability of strengthening the diaphragm so that it can't reherniate. So it's both. And then of course diet plays into that as well. So let's talk a little bit about diet, and then I'm going to get going. But obviously, if you have Barrett's esophagus, it's really important that you're following more of a reflux type, an acid watchers type, a whole foods plant-based diet type of regimen. Why? Because these diets are going to eliminate all or most common trigger foods for reflux, right? We want to get that reflux under control. And there's a lot of different things you can do to kind of manage your reflux. You know, you can elevate the head of your bed. You can buy a pillow wedge and sleep on a pillow wedge at night. You can wear loose clothing. You can forego heavy lifting. And you can certainly make changes to your diet, which I think is probably one of the most important things that you can do, or the most beneficial things, impactful things that you can do. So eliminating those common trigger foods, hopefully you know what those are by now. High fat foods, sugar, alcohol, cigarettes, chocolate, peppermint, citrus, tomato, garlic and onions. There's a list. You can Google that and make sure that you're avoiding those foods. And you might think, well, gee, what's left? Really what we're doing is we're trying to eliminate the highly acidic foods, and then just really becoming very aware of the very plentiful and variety of alkaline foods that are left. There's plenty of them. There really are. It might take a little bit of a learning curve to figure out what that means. I ascribe to a whole foods plant-based diet, which means I eat nothing but plant foods. And there is really a huge variety in the plant kingdom when it comes to my choices of foods. And it's great. It's great. So, and it's delicious. You know, you just may have to learn how to shop different. You may have to learn how to cook a little bit differently. There are a lot of resources to help you out with this. Dr. Jonathan Aviv's book, The Acid Watcher Diet, I recommend his book, even though it's not a plant-based diet. It's close to it. It is close to it. I think it's a great diet, though, for someone who thinks, oh, I could never do a plant-based diet or a vegan diet. But he basically eliminates the common trigger foods and has you eating more, you know, alkaline foods. So yeah, and then on top of that, again, a daily beverage to denature the pepsin in the esophagus as well. And these things will really get you on the right path so that your body, again, can take over and do the healing that's necessary to heal your esophagus. So that's it for today. Make sure if you're new to my channel that you are following me here on Facebook or on my YouTube channel, where I copy this content to my YouTube channel, where I have a lot of free content talking about hiatal hernia, reflux, and health in general, plant-based diets. My website is pamfox.org, and that's where I have my paid content, which includes my online courses and my one-on-one coaching services. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope all of you have a very lovely day.